Hello, everybody. Good late morning, almost afternoon to everyone who's in attendance with our very first Setting a Future Ready Foundation virtual workshop series for Penn State New Kensington and Nextovation. My name's Corinne Colson. I'm the Manager of Strategic Communications and Marketing at Penn State New Kensington, and I'm just going to go over a few ground rules before we get started into the actual presentation. So I do want to remind everyone that due to this being a webinar, your microphones will be muted and your video is turned off for the participants who are watching. We are recording this session so that we can send this recording out to everyone who attends today, as well as those who might not have been able to make it. For those attending live, so those of you who are watching with us and in the room with us right now via Zoom, we will be using the Q&A feature to ask any questions that you may have during this webinar. So if you do have a question, you'll see that little icon there that says Q&A on your screen. Feel free to use that, click on that. We do ask that you enter one question at a time, and we'll be taking some breaks throughout so that Dr. Snider can address those questions that you have during the presentation. We also want to make this interactive. So we are actually going to have several poll breaks. So you will see some poll questions that will pop up on your screen, and we do ask that you interact with those. We'll go over those, as I mentioned, as well as the Q&A that you may have during the session. So we are so very happy that you are with us. And I am done going over those ground rules and talking for right now, but I would like to introduce the person who will be guiding you through this introduction to Industry 4.0. And I'm actually going to hand this over to him and allow him to introduce himself, Dr. Kevin Snider, our Chancellor at Penn State New Kensington.
Thank you, Corinne, and welcome everybody. I'm so glad that you're here, and I have to tell you, this is a really important issue for me. And you might be wondering why. If you look at my bio here that's on the screen, you can see that I have a background in political science, more than 30 years of higher education and leadership experience. I'm a chancellor. I've been here 13 years. And prior to that, I was chief of staff for the president at Indiana State. And I also started at Indiana State in institutional research, which is really using data to try and look at challenges and opportunities for that university. And so the reason why I'm here talking about Industry 4.0 is because I am worried and interested in preparing not just students for the future, but also because I believe that higher education has a fundamental responsibility to be involved in communities. And if you can see from the number of things that number of initiatives that we've started at Penn State New Kensington, we're very involved in our community. And it's through that involvement that we found out about Industry 4.0 and how important it is to prepare students and communities for that, as well as business and industry. It's a little bit of a misnomer. I know that some of you are not in manufacturing or in industry, and we have tailored a lot of our things today to manufacturing. But this is important for everybody, and I'm going to raise examples of why it is. So, why it is that way. So the reason why it's a misnomer is the Industrial Revolution isn't just about manufacturing. It's about all of us. And one of the things that this pandemic has done is shown us that we are all in a different world. We're in a new age. We're calling it the new normal. We have actually been preparing for the new normal for Industry 4.0 well before this pandemic hit. It's just everybody at the same time got an example of what disruption really is. And it's rare in our lives we're going to have a global disruption like this, but it's one that not only shows how transformative things can be, but also what are the tools that you need to know about and use in order to overcome that disruption. And the fourth industrial revolution is really about disruption that is going to be put upon us by technology. So what is Industry 4.0? Well, the first Industry 1.0 was about mechanization and steam power and the weaving loom and being able to produce products at a little bit of a faster rate. The second industrial revolution was about mass production lines. We all probably remember and have seen the videos and and the photographs of people putting together the Ford cars early in the day, right? Where they're all sitting there and they're pushing things along a line. That was Industry 4.0, aided by electricity. The third industrial revolution is when we started to bring in machines and computers and electronics so that not all of the processes were done by human beings. And the fourth industrial revolution is about the cyber-physical systems, the interconnectivity of kind of virtual worlds and Internet of Things and networks and technology and integrated and in many different ways into that production line. But the other thing about Industry 4.0 is these same things, cyber physical systems, Internet of Things, networks are affecting all of us. Right now, me coming to you like this is an example of that. I don't know how many of you have Zoom meetings, but Zoom meetings are the new normal for me, one after the other. That's an example of us being able to adapt to a disruption using technology and thinking creatively about how do we still continue to do business. That's what Industry 4.0 is about. So what are the components of Industry 4.0 that we need to think about? Well, let me go around the wheel here. The first is cloud and edge computing. And cloud and edge computing is putting large amounts of data up in a cloud and having fast computing to be able to process that data in a nanosecond. And the example I always use with this are driverless cars. It used to be that driverless cars were not thought to be a reality because you can't take a left-hand turn. There are too many variables when you take a left-hand turn. And the computers on board those cars were standalones. They weren't connected to anything. They were just sitting in the car with all the data you could load on a computer. So limited amount of data, relatively slow processing time. Now when a driverless car takes a left-hand turn, it is accessing every single left-hand turn made by a car in that company and every single left-hand turn being made in real time in a nanosecond. Think about the power of that. In order to do that, you have to have big data and analytics. And there are incredible ways of developing these big data sets. Big data sets are being developed every day. If you have a phone, you can't see it because of the background. But if you have an iPhone, you are generating tremendous amounts of data. Your buying patterns, where you are, what you're looking at, the news that you get into. You are generating information and data that's being gathered somewhere. And that is being replicated across our universe in terms of the cars we drive, the streets we drive on, all those kinds of things are all generating big data. Automation is really something that we need to think about. And automation, as you know, is really about taking the manufacturing line and automating it so that you really don't have a lot of human interaction. In order to do that, you need robots. And so robotics has not only just infiltrated the manufacturing line, but robotics and automation are infiltrating everywhere. We train people to be journalists in higher education, right? It used to be that we would train them to go to a game and report on the game. Now, because, well, I'm getting into mixing the technologies, but now when a person or a game is played, the information off of the digitized play-by-play and the stats are inputted into a program that spits out the story. So if you are a journalist, you've got to think differently about what that means. And that really gets into more about machine learning that I'll talk about in a minute. But these two technologies, robotics and automation, are changing the way things are being produced, changing the speed at which they're being produced. And it's not just a manufacturing, it's in health. If you go out on the internet, you can find examples of robots actually taking care of individuals with COVID to help protect care workers. Additive manufacturing, you've all heard about 3D printing. That's probably the best example of additive manufacturing, and that is changing the world as we know it. You've probably seen the stories on YouTube about parents that have been able to produce prosthetics for their children on their own with a 3D printer, all kinds of creative things that are happening there. The Internet of Things is the interconnectivity of all these. And so I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. AI and machine learning, I alluded to with my little story about the sports program. Really, machines are not just processing things, they're actually taking things into account and learning from them. And so this is a really big piece of advancing technology. Augmented and virtual reality is more than video games. It's been kind of interesting. There is a CMU Institute for Entertainment that does a lot of work in augmented and virtual reality. And you're thinking, well, that's great. You know, it's great to see it on screen. But think of what you can do in a virtual environment. If you have a virtual training exercise for firemen or for police officers, or if you have a virtual lab that in a pandemic, we might be able to replicate students being able to go into a chemistry lab and do an experiment. Those things are here and they're coming in a faster fashion. Also very soon you'll be able, if you aren't already, being able to fix an engine being guided by augmented and virtual reality. Simulation and digital twin is something that is very big, we think, in manufacturing. Basically, the largest companies that we know are coming to us and telling us that in the near future, if you are going to sell them something, if you are going to sell a camera to iPhone, you will be asked to produce a virtual twin, a digital twin, that they can take that virtual twin and put it into their camera. So they'll take your camera in a virtual environment, put it in into their phone, and they will take pictures and throw it in water and expose it to heat without having to spend money and time on that process. The cybersecurity, because everything is going virtual, everything is going online, is a huge, huge area right now. And if you are a student and thinking about getting into law enforcement, I would suggest you start to think about cybersecurity as well. Advanced materials. It's incredible what's happening with materials. Arconic was talking to me at one point about the fact that one day they will be able to produce in materials that sense a projectile coming into a car, say, and exploding out to try and protect the people in it, as well as cleaning themselves and washing themselves of graffiti. It's a whole different world. And so with system integration, that's the integration of all these things. Why is this important to us? This is important to us because the advances that are coming and the interaction of these technologies is producing change at an unprecedented rate. And it's forcing companies to think differently. And it's forcing us to think differently about what we're preparing our students for, about what communities are going to need to be successful and to revitalize. And that's why it's important. So think about each of these pieces of technology. And we'd like to ask you a couple poll questions. Corinne?
So I am going to launch our first set of polling questions. There's actually going to be 4. So you'll see those on your screen and you should have a pop-up window that just appeared. I want to ask you to read through these questions 1 through 4 and feel free to start answering and picking these things up. We know not everybody is going to be an expert into all of those technologies that Dr. Snider just went over, but we do want you to show us and let everybody know what technologies are familiar to you. So again, we'll leave the poll open for a minute or 2 just to give everybody a chance to read through, because there is a lot of answers to choose from and a lot of text here. And then we will share the results of what everybody has chosen and have a little discussion for that. So take a minute, answer through those 4 questions. For those of you who may be watching this as a recording, so you're not attending live, we'd like you to think about these at home or wherever you may be watching this from. Think about what answers that you would give to these polls, and as we discuss the answers, be sure to think about those as you're thinking about you as a person, or you as an individual, as a worker or owner of a business organization there. So we're getting some results coming in. We have about 12% of everybody answering through these questions. We'll give it about another minute. So we have about 50% of our participants have answered. So we're getting through these questions. And don't forget, if you are attending live and you have a question about anything we're going over during this presentation, to use that Q&A feature and you can input your questions, and we'll take time to answer those throughout the presentation today. And we're getting the last votes to come trickling in. I see that number increasing there for those who have completed. I know there's a lot there. And we probably didn't even list all the technologies that Industry 4.0 has and what the next industrial revolution will bring. All right, I'm going to end polling right now. We're going to bring up these results so that everybody can see how everyone answered.
Okay.
So you should be seeing those results on your screen. So Dr. Snider, you should be able to scroll through those.
Thank you. And it looks like that most people know what robotics is and cloud computing. That's great to see. Few people know what other is. That's great. Neither do I. Let's see, simulation, digital twinning. That's not surprising. If you're not manufacturing and thinking about the future at this point, you probably aren't aware of the importance that's going to have. And so that's really understandable. It's good to see that people are familiar with robotics and cloud computing, and large groups are also familiar with machine learning and automation. So that's wonderful. What technologies are not familiar? That should be the opposite of what we just said, but additive manufacturing is not familiar to about 5 out of 11, just under half, or simulation and digital twins. So that's about what we expected. And everyone seems to have a good sense of the technology. What is the biggest impact on you or your company? Big data and data analytics. I couldn't agree more. The amount of data that we're gathering on all kinds of our behaviors and our activities and our functions and our initiatives is just phenomenal. And it's actually being used in ways we don't even quite understand yet. And of course, you need the cloud computing in order to do that. So I agree. Those are having a tremendous impact on our society and on our working environment. What problems and challenges are you looking to overcome the use of technology? Learning new technologies, yes, I agree. There's so many of them out there. That's an issue. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we might be able to help you on that front. Improving bottom line, you'll be glad to know we're also going to address that a little bit in future webinars. Becoming more efficient and retaining savvy employees are things that we will all be discussing over the next couple weeks. Learning skills to add to my resume. Really want to encourage you to get involved with us because we're hoping to introduce you to those technologies that we listed, as well as some of the other skills that you need for Industry 4.0. So thank you very much for that feedback. We're going to take that. It will help us craft and hone down some of our other technologies. So really appreciate that. And our other technologies, our other webinars. And so now we will move on to the next part of the discussion, which is how do all of these technologies impact companies? How are they thinking about Industry 4.0? And why are these things important? And then what does that mean for us as individuals, for people outside of manufacturing? Well, essentially, the companies that came to us and introduced us to Industry 4.0 told us that they needed entrepreneurs. They found out that we were trying to develop entrepreneurs, and they told us they needed entrepreneurs, which are people that think entrepreneurially within big companies, or within the organization. And the reason why they needed those is that they have to become efficient and flexible. And remember, what drives manufacturing and what drives big companies is meeting shareholder expectations in the quarter they're in, which has all kinds of problems. But in the quarter they're in, they have to show that they're efficient and they're profitable. And how do you become profitable? Well, you increase efficiency. And so you have to become efficient and flexible. But in this digital age, because discoveries on that wheel are happening at an accelerated pace, one we've never seen before, your ability to absorb that technology and to be able to put it into practice to create efficiencies and then be able to look at what's next so that you can continue to be competitive is happening at a phenomenal rate. And so that's why digital integration is so important, and the digital twin, because it allows you to test lots of different things without having to wait for materials, without having to wait for results. You can do it in a much faster pace, as well as you need the digital integration so the things that you're implementing are generating the big data that you need to be able to leverage so that you can become predictive. And when you become predictive, you can expand your business models and figure out what your customers need or where there's another niche that you can fill. And so these are all things that companies have to do constantly. You know, it used to be that you could do this once and then you were set for 20, 30 years. That's no longer the case. So this is a constant wheel of integrating the technology, assessing what technologies are out there that are going to be next, and being able to use those to help your business model. But it also helps us as individuals, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So what are the challenges if you're an individual or you are a company in trying to figure out how you monitor or get through Industry 4.0 success? One is data analytics. You need to be able to take data that's being generated at unprecedented rates and access that data and determine how you can turn that data into information that answers a question, or even that shows you what the question is. So data analytics is a huge part of this. You don't have to be a PhD in data analytics to do some of this stuff. Coordinating of actions across the organization, very, very big. If you have one section of your university that, or that's a Freudian slip, one section of your organization that is not really coordinated with the others, everything will come to a screeching halt. And so you need to coordinate your actions across the organization to be able to implement Industry 4.0 success. Building a business case is huge. We have to show that people and organizations are getting a return on investment for the amount of time, effort, and money they would put in to be familiar with Industry 4.0 technologies. Finding, motivating, and retaining talent. If you have all of the most sophisticated software or hardware and you don't have anyone to run it, or you don't have people that are thinking creatively about what to do with these things next, then you're not going to be very effective. A transformational vision. Industry 4.0 and the fourth industrial revolution and navigating that is all about being able to articulate and to move toward a future, right? And so you need people that can help you form that vision and implement it. And then finally, the real key to Industry 4.0 is disruption and transformation and change. And so adapting, building, and owning a culture of change is hugely important. What we tend to do as individuals, as humans, and as organizations is we'd like to have a change and then that be the change. That's going to be it. We're going to be doing the same thing for the next 15, 20 years. That's over. And so we need to figure out how we can adapt, build, and own a culture of change. As you move through corporate and business success factors, and think about this if you're an individual. Remember that step ladder we had before? Efficiency and flexibility all the way through expanded business models. Think of how those things we just talked about, the challenges that we just addressed, impact this. So if you're going to be efficient and flexible, you need to coordinate your actions across the organization. You have one piece of your organization or one area of your life where you're extremely flexible, another you're just really not. You don't want to, let's say in this day and age, you don't want to move from your town. You're going to have some limits placed on you, or you don't want to use technology. You're going to have limits placed on you. If you're an organization and you have everybody on board and thinking about Industry 4.0 and efficiency, but one piece of your organization is not, that's not going to be very efficient. Accelerated technology implementation, it takes the transformational vision to explain to people why they need to change and implement this technology on a continuing basis. Digital integration, that one is just, you have to do that if you're going to do any of this, so that's a given. Leveraging big data, thinking about data analytics, thinking about that wheel of technologies and how those technologies are interacting. I'll give you just a quick example. You know, I learned that they are developing restrooms where when you go to do your business, they will assess your health, right? So When you go into your private bathroom, you can have, eventually you'll be able to tell whether or not you are getting some kind of infection, or whether your blood sugar's up or whatever. And if you think about what the amount of data that's being leveraged for that and how that interacts. So you have this technology here where people are going to the restroom and is gathering data on their health. And you are Quest Diagnostics, and your business is taking people's blood. How is that data going to change? How are you going to change to be able to take advantage of that? And I talked to a vice president about that. And she said, you know, what we're really in is we are in the business of gathering data. So whether we get it from blood or we get it from restrooms, we're in the business of evaluating data. But how we evaluate that data, how we protect it, how we use it to think about what's next are all things that they're going to have to think about now so they can become predictive. And this is really, I think, a key point of where we are, not just as companies, not just as communities, but also as people. How do we develop a culture of change where change is what we're used to? And I think that is something that is really different for us. I think that we have been given a lesson in that over the last 4 or 5 months with the pandemic. You know, we have had to transform. Penn State was able to transform from a campus or from 21 campuses where people went every day to an all virtual environment for almost 100,000 people. That's incredible. But we can't just stay there. So now we're thinking about how do we get people back on campus and how do we integrate the technology to create better learning environments for them. Those are all things about that involve a culture of change. Expanded business models, it's going to allow us, in our case, with the example I just gave, we're going to be able to expand into other areas, workforce development, reaching out to students and individuals in the workforce who need additional information about Industry 4.0 technology, for instance, because we're going to be able to look at what's coming. And we have a culture of change now on our campus where we're thinking about those kinds of things. And then finally, finding, motivating, and retaining talent is key to all of these. If you're a student, we want to try and turn you into that talent that people need and desire. So with that, we're going to ask you another poll question. Corinne?
So we're going to take 1 minute. We just have one question, this poll. And we want to know, thinking about you as a person or as an employee or as an organization, what you need to overcome those identified challenges. So think about everything you answered in those previous 4 poll questions about technologies you know, technologies you don't know, and think about what you need to overcome as a person or organization in implementing some of these related technologies or systems. So the votes are starting to come in.
They're used to this now.
Yep. And just another reminder for that Q&A. So if you do have a question or something pops in your mind that you're curious about, don't forget to submit your questions via the Q&A so that we can make sure we answer those before the end of today's session. And we'll give it another 30 seconds or so to let the last few read through those options and get their votes in.
TikTok.
Yep. All right, so we're going to end polling. We'll share those results so that we can discuss.
I think it is really interesting that help assessing what exactly you or your organization needs is the majority answer, because we've all had this discussion in our project about how do you prepare people for a world that you don't really know what it's going to look like in the future, and how do you keep track of the various technologies and the advances being made when they're made at a tremendously fast pace? And so we've been thinking about that as well, and I think that we may have some answers for you both today and well, we can't help you assess exactly, but we can tell you how we're going to help you assess what exactly your organization needs. But I also want to stress that that's going to be an ongoing endeavor, probably for the rest of our careers, the rest of our lives, in assessing what our needs are going to be and how we can integrate the technologies and the changes that are happening in order to meet those or overcome the challenges that are presented to us. The second most is a tie. So connections to organizations who can assist you and your organization, virtual training opportunities. We're working on those as well, and we're going to talk about an exciting project on that in just a minute. Money for new equipment. This is huge, and this is why the digital environment is so important, because small companies, small manufacturers, individuals can't afford all of to test drive all of the technologies that are out there. And so what we are trying to do at Penn State New Kensington and in our project that I'm going to talk about in a minute is develop the opportunity for people to test drive those in a facility that is not as costly. So in-person training opportunities for self and employees, this is the start of that. So you've taken the first step. If you are, if that is something that you're interested in, you've taken the first step by joining us today, and we're hopeful as we start to lay out some of the additional training and webinars that we're providing that you take advantage of those as well. So with that, are there any questions yet?
Yes, we did have one question. Someone asked if they could get a copy of these presentation slides. So all attendees today will get a link in the next week or so for this presentation so that you can re-listen to it or share it as needed with others that you may know or even within your organization. And we'll also give an attachment of the slide deck as well.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the questions. So, you know, we asked you what your biggest challenge is. What is our biggest challenge as a campus? And if you remember, you know, our concern is our students and their futures. And I often say that really we need to be held accountable, not for the first job our students are in, but for the last one. We need to make sure they have tremendously successful careers. And so we have to prepare them for this world that I've just described. But we can't really affect the area and our students unless we do it across multiple sectors. And so our biggest challenge is preparing students, community, and our entire region for Industry 4.0. Now, before the pandemic, we were kind of on an island talking about this. But since the pandemic, people have understood that their world is changing. And so we really believe that we're onto the right formula here. We're calling what we're doing Nextovation. And that's creating value, creating understanding, creating familiarity, creating skill sets in the Industry 4.0 world for all of our stakeholders. And who are those? It's K through 12 and college education. It's not just about preparing students who go to college out of high school for an Industry 4.0 world, for the fourth industrial revolution. It's about preparing students who graduate from high school to go into fields where they also have a familiarity. It's about preparing the current workforce who need additional skills to help companies. They need to become entrepreneurs, not only for that company, but for themselves. Because one of the things that we're finding now is that it is predicted that students that graduate today will have between 4 and 11 careers, not jobs, but careers. And so we need to be able to help current workforce as well as the students in college prepare for that world where they're constantly shifting. And much of that change is being necessitated by advances in technology. You know, if you look at accounting now and how accounting has changed with some of the online accounting systems, that's just a simple example of how if you were an accountant 30 years ago, your world has really changed now. Our communities. As I mentioned, there are 80 million people in Rust Belt and rural America. And if you look at New Kensington in its past, it's a typical Rust Belt town. The home of Alcoa, very successful for decades, and now it has been in decay for decades because it has not, because of the collapse of steel and the moving of aluminum out of the city. And so how do you help those areas that are in that type of an environment get reconnected? If they're not participating in Industry 2.0 right now, how can you expect them to participate in the land in the era of smart cities and smart factories and smart cars and smart appliances, all talking to each other, all generating data? How do you help people in those communities get familiar with technology? And then finally, business and industry. And one of the reasons why we focused on manufacturing in our webinars, although we're really hoping that everybody can get this message about Industry 4.0, but one of the reasons why we're focused on manufacturing is because we know that manufacturers, 5,500 manufacturers in Southwest Pennsylvania, have to get into the Industry 4.0 world to survive. But so does Main Street business. So does the used furniture store that is on Fifth Avenue, that is our corridor of innovation. So how do we develop something that allows training and awareness and skill set development for all of these stakeholders? Because if we only raise one boat, remember we said you have to include all parts of your organization. You have to include all parts of your communities in this. If we don't educate the future of tomorrow's students in Industry 4.0, we're missing the boat. If we don't provide opportunities for current workforce, if we don't provide opportunities for our communities and displaced workers, and if we don't get business and industry in line, we are going to fall further and further behind. So what we are trying to do with our Nextovation project in Industry 4.0 is to provide training and awareness in all of these things for our populations, for those stakeholders. And so let me go over what that is. We talked a little bit about the technology. Now, if you looked at my background, you would realize that I'm a political scientist, and that probably right now is a stretch. I haven't done that in years. But then you would also realize that if you knew me, that I'm about the furthest thing from a technologically savvy person you can imagine. But what I do know is data, and I know how to look at trends. And I know that these things that are interacting, I need to keep an eye on. I need to keep an eye on for how virtual and augmented reality is interacting with robotics, so that we might have virtual environments that are aided by robotics in labs. I need to think about simulation and digital twin in terms of how to do processes that might be making us more efficient. I need to think about cloud and edge computing for the speed and processing power that we might have to help entrepreneurs and help our faculty and staff. So I have to think about these things as well. And in order to do that, I need to learn a little bit about them. And that's what we hope to do for our students, for our community, for business and industry. And then if you want deeper dives, we're going to be developing those technologies or those opportunities as well. But we also have to look at the innovation mindset and the skills and essential skills on the right-hand side. We spent a lot of time before the pandemic and during it talking to companies about what they need, what they see in the future, what they think is going to happen. We've had 2 business plans that have helped us think this through. And what we found is that, on the one hand, what companies really need are people that have service orientation, collaboration, cognitive flexibility, positive attitude, empathy and understanding, emotional intelligence, judgment, I would even say some global intelligence, right? And so those are things that we think we do well. Business and industry, not as much, but we're working on that. So we need to be able to provide companies with opportunities to develop these things. But guess what? These things are also the things that help you navigate through an Industry 4.0 world. We have to develop, and we used to talk about continuous learning, lifelong learning. That's true. It's never been more true than now, where you have to continually learn about these things that are affecting your lives, your careers, and your companies. Complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity is huge, and it's a big part of having an innovative entrepreneurial mindset. So we're developing programming and essential skill sets to help develop these essential skill sets that we want to share with our community, with students K through 16, with workers, current workforce, and with our business and industry. And we're doing that because we believe that this is our responsibility. We, as a partner in this community, in this part of the state, in this part of our region, need to help our companies and our stakeholders get familiar and get integrated into Industry 4.0. So Nextovation is really about kind of the nexus of all these things, community, business, industry, local government, and education, finding ways to develop training and information and awareness that helps bring everybody into the next digital age. So, an interactive poll question for you. Corinne.
So this is actually our last poll break. So you'll see 2 more questions appear on your screen. And after listening to Dr. Snider talk, we want to know what you think. Thinking about future ready employees. So whether you're a student or an individual or an employee yourself, or you're an employer, what do future ready employees need? Those hard skills or essential skills. And as you'll see, those essential skills are things that sometimes are referred to as soft skills, but we really think that those are essential to move forward. We still need things like communication and collaboration. And then we want to know what your priority is or what your organization's priority is. So we're getting those votes to come in. And we also do have another question. So once we get through these poll results, we'll be able to open it up to more questions and answer one of the open questions that we have as well. And if you do select other, I noticed we got an answer in of someone who selected other and they wanted to give an explanation, which is a perfect explanation. We'll go over that with the answers. So if you want to elaborate or explain, feel free to use that Q&A feature as well. All right, give it about 10 more seconds and we'll close out the poll. Okay. So we'll share these results. So you should be able to see the results now.
Yes, I do. And, Corinne, this reminds me of the talk show hosts now who have to, talk in their living rooms to audiences and share jokes. It's a little hard. I crave the interaction with you. I'm so sorry we can't have that. But, what do you think future ready employees need? It's an even split. And I would agree with you. The knowledge of the technologies, you don't have to be an expert in these technologies necessarily, depending on what your goals are as an organization or as an individual, or what your function is. But you do have to be aware of what they are and what they can do and what the changes are in them. And I agree, future ready employees will be ones that look at that wheel and think about it, not only in terms of what's it going to do, what are these changes and these technologies going to be able to add to their jobs and to their companies, but also how is it going to affect them as individuals. There is a World Economic Jobs Forum report out that talks about, it's 4 years, they predict what the jobs will be in 4 years. And they added a disruption factor into the job categories. It's really fascinating to see. So most jobs, 7% every 4 years is what they think the disruption from technology will be on average in those categories. But some are 100%, which means they'll be replaced. So I would recommend to everybody, if you are, regardless of your function, regardless of your company, think about that wheel and how it can, and what's happening in it, so that you can project what you can use to help you as you navigate through this new normal, as we're calling it. The essential skills training, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we hope to do is to be able to look at communication and collaboration and project management and leadership in the Industry 4.0 world. For instance, I'm talking to you as through a webinar right now. It's a format very similar to Zoom. And for the last 4 or 5 months, my life has been Zoom, as it has for many of you. How I interact on that, how I talk, how I look for cues and what people are thinking, how I get them to take their pictures off of picture and into videos so that we can see them and have a conversation, how you motivate people. All those things are changing because of the technologies that we're using to interact. And they're not all bad. And so trying to figure out ways that we can use and hone these essential skills, collaboration in a virtual environment, project management in a virtual environment, leadership in a time of continual change where people are constantly having their lives disrupted. And if you work at Penn State right now, you understand that because we're in the middle of a big business systems transformation, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of trying to figure out how to be more receptive and understanding of students. So this is a world that's going to be constantly changing. And so figuring out how we can use these essential skills in integrating in technology is key. What's your priority, your organization's priority? The biggest one is training and education to strengthen skill sets. You'll be happy to know we're working on that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And what are the other things here? Figuring out how to remain competitive in a technology-driven era. That, I think, is going to be an ongoing challenge for everyone. Providing opportunities for future-ready skills building to students, employees, and others. Absolutely. I think, that's going to be key. And I think we're going to have to work as a community. We're going to have to work as a state. We're going to have to work as a region. We're going to have to work as a university. And we're going to have to work as an entire community to make that happen. We can't allow sectors of our manufacturing and businesses to fall behind. We can't allow our students to fall behind. We can't allow our current workers to fall behind. We have a chance here in this region to prepare students for a whole different world. So looking forward to doing that with you, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I see there's polling for question 3. Are you getting ready to share a poll, Corinne?
Nope, I just closed out the poll, so those results should have disappeared from your screen.
Okay.
But we had someone who selected the other for both of those options, and they elaborated a little bit more in their comments, and I think it's really important to share that. And the individual wrote, I selected other because talent management strategies should include hard skills and essential skills. So I think that's very, very true, as I'm sure you would agree, and as we saw from the poll results. So appreciated that answer
Absolutely.
There.
Thank you. And thank you all for participating in the polls. I know that that really helps us. I hope it gives you a sense of where you are in relation to others and what you're thinking. I think, one of the things we miss from webinars is being able to have you come together and talk and learn from each other, but we will have lots of opportunities for that in the future. So what's next? What's next in Industry 4.0? For us, we have and are delighted to announce that we are building a digital innovation lab in the city of New Kensington. It will be a partner and part of our Nextovation effort. And really, there are 5 things that we're doing in Nextovation. One is we have a corner launch box. So if you're interested in entrepreneurship thinking and how to think as an entrepreneur, or you have an idea for a business, we have free programming. Please contact us on that one, and we will get you in there, and Rhonda Schultz will open your eyes to a whole and new and interesting world. So we have the entrepreneurial component. We have co-working space in New Kensington. We also have a corridor of innovation, which is a street where we are applying Penn State research and research coming out of CMU and hopefully other universities to those challenges that communities are facing in overcoming or moving from Rust Belt to Digital Belt. And so we're very excited about that initiative. And if you are someone who is a faculty member who has some research that can be applied there, we'd love to talk to you and work with you on things of that nature. And if you're a student, really looking for students to get involved in the Nextovation effort. There will be a lot of opportunity to do that. And if you want to get involved in that, please contact me. And then finally, well, not finally, is workforce development and corporate training that we are developing. So we are really moving through. We're really moving through things that we can do to help. And then finally is this Digital Innovation Lab, where we will be able to provide you an opportunity to see technologies, to be aware of some of the things that are happening. We're going to work with our partners to develop those kinds of things that will really give you a good understanding of some of the areas on the wheel that are there, and also provide the relationships and the opportunities for you to connect with people that maybe have expertise in one or more, as well as some deep dive training for those who want to get really into what is a digital twin and be able to use it to great effect for their companies. So we're looking forward to that. We're thinking that will be here in the spring with construction starting this fall. And when that comes up, really want you to be a part of that. The other thing that we're doing is setting, in order to set a future-ready foundation, is to come up with a series of awareness workshops, much like this, that are really focusing in on some of those things we've discussed. And we have a whole series of these. The first four are on your screen. The ROI of Industry 4.0 is really about the return of investment. There was a question about that, developing, an understanding of what is the real benefit of Industry 4.0 technologies and diving in, and how do you assess what that benefit is. Steve Leonard, my colleague, who is patiently watching me on this, is going to be offering that on Tuesday, July 28th from 11:30 to 12:30. And then Data and Internet of Things is something that we'll be offering on August 11th. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more of that, I know there was some interest on the things that we talked about. And virtual communication and collaboration is something that we have. And so that's on Tuesday, August 25th from 11:30 to 12:30. So that's a soft skill. And if you're interested in learning about that, I think we've got a really exciting session for you. And then finally, data visualization on September 10th. And there will be more. So keep coming back to us on our website and figuring out how you can get involved in working with us as a community, as a university, as a partner in this region to try and advance everybody's boat and get all of us ready for the new normal. So I want to thank you for attending. I want to thank Corinne for her work and efforts today, and Steve for contributing to this presentation. And I hope you got something out of it. And if you do nothing else, please go out and look at these technologies and try and gain an understanding about how they're going to affect your lives and your companies, and come back and talk to us. We really want to do this together. So thank you. I hope this has been productive, and I look forward to seeing you in another seminar or webinar in the near future. Thanks.
So while we do have a couple minutes left, I do want to say that we have a open question. So if you do have some burning questions that you would like to ask Dr. Snider, feel free to type those in the Q&A. And I've been holding this question till the end. And the question is, what role are private companies playing in supporting your efforts? And are there any that you can talk about or share?
Yeah, our biggest company right now, we have several. Sorry, my keyboard just took a dive. We have several. Siemens is our biggest partner, probably the most active in an Industry 4.0 market. They are really active in the building of the Digital Innovation Lab, and they have been very active in helping us think through Industry 4.0 from an industry perspective. Now, Siemens is really in the position of trying to meet the needs of large numbers of companies in moving toward the Industry 4.0 network. So they are really a key sponsor for us. They will be providing some of the software and hopefully some of the displays that we'll have in our Digital Innovation Lab, but they've also been very, very helpful in helping us think through this. The other one is Arconic, more before the latest breakup of that company than now, but Arconic was really key, and the first company that came to us and said, you need to think about Industry 4.0, and they have been really instrumental in alerting us to what technologies are involved and how those technologies are important, not just to business or to manufacturing, but to business and industry and community as well. And then we have some smaller companies, one of which that I can name now is JB Manufacturing, which is a company over in Natrona Heights, mid-sized manufacturing company, maybe 120, 130 employees. And they're a good example of a company that knows there is something that needs to happen for them to become more efficient and more productive in the Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution. They're just not quite sure what it is. So they've been giving us, along with several other companies, an idea of what they face and the challenges that they have and some of the solutions. So they've been very active in this as well. So those are a few of the companies that we have. We have board members that have just signed on from software companies that are interested in helping us think through Industry 4.0 from that perspective. There is a additive manufacturing or 3D printing, advanced 3D printing, lots of different materials that has just joined us and is working on how we can display some of that technology in the Digital Innovation Lab. And every day we're tending to get more and more partners. One of the things that we love about this is not just the private business aspect of it, but the partners include the county, the city of New Kensington, the Economic Growth Connection, foundations. RK Mellon has been really huge and a key supporter of this. Carnegie Mellon, CMU, is involved in our K through 12 efforts, as well as in bringing technology in broadband into New Kensington. We're working with them on that, as well as several research projects that they've done for us, and some associations of foundations like SESME are also involved. So we've got a plethora of partners that are excited by what we're doing, are excited by the success we're seeing, and are supporting us and helping us move forward. I hope that answers the question.
So before we close out, I will do a last call for questions. So get your typing fingers ready. And there we got a big thank you for answering. So it sounds like you did answer that question very well. But I do want to remind everybody about those programs again. You can feel free to go to our website. Again, that's nextovation.org. Look at upcoming events, which also include events at our Innovation Hub, the Corner. So on those essential skills or entrepreneurial or innovative thinking, there's classes there as well that are free and virtual during this time. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in. So I think we can close it out.